Hey guys, Jeremy here, and in this video we're going to talk about fonts. Now I've just done a little bit of a squiggle behind me of some fonts that I used to do in high school, you know, some bubble writing, that classic S, but I do have to clarify that I'm not a graphic designer or a font designer. I've just worked with a bunch of different brands and my own brands and know how important it is to get those fonts nailed early on in the piece. So let's dive in. So I've just got a Canva whiteboard in front of me, and I've started off with a heading, and the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, which, as we can see here, has all the letters of the English alphabet. And then I've got some lorem ipsum, and you can research that just by looking up for that. And that's sort of a little bit of random letters that don't actually make any sense. It really fills out your paragraph. So I've got the heading and sort of a subheading, and let's call this a paragraph. And so all these fonts are currently using the Canva Sans font. It is a very good font, but it is just for Canva. We often think of trying to use Google fonts these days, so that way they're consistent across all different browsers. And so if we were going to have a little bit of a play around with these fonts, we could justify by clicking here. We're justifying to the left, full justify, right justify, and center. So we're just going to leave it on center for this stage. Look, one of my favorite fonts that I use all the time is Open Sans. There is a bit of pushback on Open Sans. Some people don't like it, but I think it's a very versatile font, really readable and nice to work with. Now I'm just going to put a little rectangle in behind this font here because we can't quite see it. There we go, that looks nicer, and we can see the font a little bit better because of that whiteboard dot. I just pressed R for rectangle on Canva. So let's have a little bit more of a dig into these fonts, and if I was going to select all three and then you know, just jiggling around here, we've got this weird open dyslexic font and then open source. There are just so many fonts out there, but I think it is important to lock in your font early on. Now what we could do is look for serif fonts, for example. A serif font has those little heads and tails on there, so we can see we've got a serif font happening here. I've picked Solway. I suppose one of the classic serif fonts is Times New Roman, and that's got this sort of very historic sort of heritage feel to it. But you've got to be careful when you're choosing your fonts to decide whether you want serif, sans serif, or indeed handwriting. So let's go for a handwriting font. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Look, they often use handwriting fonts in architecture. So, you know, thinking about where people are using different fonts is important because it will give feeling and nuance to your brand. I did talk about Google fonts a moment ago. So going into these Google fonts, we're sorting by trending fonts at the moment. If we scroll down here, we can see Open Sans is right up the top. So everyone has the right to freedom of thought. Isn't that nice that they've got that as their copy in there? But we could, you know, just type something, and if I was going to paste in the standard lorem ipsum, or if we were going to use the quick brown fox. I like the quick brown fox because it does have every letter of the English alphabet, so that way we can actually see what every letter looks like. So we can see in Roboto, which is one of the most used fonts in sort of the Google sphere, and then if we look down, there's Open Sans. This bit count one is kind of interesting. It's nice to know that's a Google font. So a Google font will essentially display, let's say, properly in all kinds of browsers. So whether that's on a phone or on a website. So, you know, starting off with a Google font, there are, you know, many of them, and they keep growing all the time. And yeah, so one of the fonts that Environmentarian uses is Cabin. So that's my heading font for Environmentarian. And then Inter is another font that I've been using quite a lot lately, and we can see the font here, Inter, and we've got the different variations, Inter Tight, and then if we go in there, we can probably have a look at the different kinds of styles of Inter. So we've got the thin, italic, extra light, And then as we go down, it starts getting thicker and thicker, and so we're almost getting to sort of, this is semi-bold, and then if we keep going, we've got sort of bold and extra bold. So that sort of goes through sort of a really touch on how fonts are displayed and where you can find fonts, whether you can play around in Canva or play around with the Google fonts. But I would connect with your graphic designer and talk to them about your brand. So they're going to ask you questions about what your brand relates to. Is it crisp? Is it new? Or is it old and a little bit dusty? Dusty can be a good thing. So it really does depend on your business. Is it a cleaning business, a dog walking business, a building business? Is it something a little bit more old school, like stained glass windows, where you want to go for a serif font, so something a little bit more heritage? Is it something modern and bright, like a kindergarten or a daycare, in which case a very readable sans serif font would be more appropriate probably. Your graphic designer will ask you questions about the look and feel, and if you answer these honestly, then it will help them decide what kind of fonts would work for your brand. And basically you want at least 2 fonts maybe. So let's say we wanted a font for your headings and then a font for your body. You might want to think about bold and italics, and then you've sort of got this suite of fonts that will work well for all your online marketing and offline marketing. So if you're going to have a website or the signature in your email, or if you were going to have some print material, whether that's business cards or signage or maybe something on your work vehicle. So I suppose that sort of wraps up this little nugget about fonts. If you like the video, of course, give it a like and subscribe to this new Environmentarian channel. And if you've got any questions, just pop them in the chat. And if you are one of my clients, then hopefully this has been helpful. And if you're not, then maybe you want to have a chat and we can take the next steps to thinking about your brand. All right, ciao for now.